Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and good evening. Thank you again for joining us on the weekly WiggyWam Get Your Property Questions Answered webinar. I'm really pleased that you're here and able to take part in these webinars. And thank you again for all of your questions that you've been sending in over the course of the last week. Just for anybody who's never seen one of these webinars, we're now into week 4. They're flying by. Can't quite believe how quickly we're gaining momentum on this. But the point of doing all these webinars really is to share with people a little bit of sort of guidance and support and help them on their property journey, whether that's as a buyer, a seller, an estate agent, a tenant, a letting agent, a landlord, a property investor, surveyors, or anybody who's connected with the property industry to help them either build their business, increase their income, or get their property questions solved. Because sometimes I've found that there's precious few resources out there for people that have actually been, in the trenches, doing the hard work, and actually able to deliver experience straight from the University of Hard Knocks, as I like to call it. Okay, so for anybody who wants to find out a little bit more about their moving journey, maybe they've got questions, complications that they can't get answers to from their solicitor or their estate agent, or maybe they've spoken to a friend about a particular property question and it's been playing on their mind, then I encourage you to send it in to us either through the website, which is wiggywam.co.uk, or you can email it through to us on happytohelp@wiggywam.co.uk, and we'll gladly sort of take that question and we'll read it out and we'll give you some kind of an answer and support based on our experience. And again, for those of you that perhaps don't know me, let me introduce myself. My name's Silas. I am a 25-year veteran, if you like, in the property industry. I've done everything from estate agency, being a letting agent, property investor, landlord. I'm a qualified building surveyor by trade. I've had a lot of different experiences in the industry, and more recently, I've been working with a lot of property investors, helping people get started in building their own property portfolio. And some people have gone on to do extremely well as a result of that. I can't claim credit for it, really, other than being the sort of I suppose teacher, if you like, that opens the door and lets people step through it. And I'm really pleased to see some of the success that people have created. And yeah, they've certainly put my accomplishments to shame in some respects. They've gone on to achieve amazing things, which I'm really proud of. It's great to be part of somebody's journey when they've gone out there and done amazing things. But I suppose more importantly, I've worked alongside people like Martin Roberts from Homes Under the Hammer, Robbie Fowler, who's a footballer who's done a lot of property investing. A lot of people don't know that, but apparently the fans used to sing "We All Live in a Robbie Fowler House." I don't know that. I'm not a football fan, so I don't really know that, but apparently that's what they used to do. And also a guy called Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote the internationally best-selling book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So worked with some fairly big name players. I'm not saying that to boast, but I am sharing that to give you some confidence in, I'm not just Silas J. Lees that you're seeing here on a podcast that you've just discovered. I have had I'm very fortunate. I've had a grounding working with some of the best in the world. I've also worked alongside more than one secret millionaire, if you've ever seen that program on the TV. And some of you may have actually seen me on TV as well. I had a very embarrassing episode on Homes Under the Hammer once, which is worth a look out for. Now that you know a little bit about my background, you can see a little bit more about that. If it flashes up on TV as a bit of a rerun. So had a bit of a hoot when we were recording that. But yeah, anyway, that's a little bit of background. So as I say, I'm just giving that context, guys, so that you can understand that, this is the sort of experience that I've had. I've analysed hundreds and hundreds of property deals for people. And this is one of the things I absolutely love, which is troubleshooting people's property deals. And when I say deal, I really mean either your purchase or your sale, or both if you're actually involved in sort of buying and selling at the same time. It's a hangover from my property investor days where everything was a deal, right? So I do talk about deals a lot, but just understand it's either your purchase or your sale, or maybe both. And I just love it because perhaps I can see a different angle on things. I recently helped a friend of mine buy a substantial small holding before he was 30, and he was one of the few people that sort of took my knowledge and sort of advice, and really he was ringing me on a weekly basis asking me all these different questions. And there were several times when that deal might have fallen through and he might not have been able to buy it, but it was his dream home, and he kept persevering, and I gave him all the ammunition and he just went out and used it. and it was great to see. So really happy to share what wisdom I have. And as I say, I'm not proclaiming to be any kind of guru here. I love doing this sort of thing. I really do. I love sharing knowledge and wisdom with people. And if it helps you along your way, great. If it doesn't, then no hard feelings. I hope that you at least get something out of your time with us today. So that's the reason why we're doing these webinars. And I just wanted to say that I'm really excited this week. I've got a little bit of an exciting announcement to make this week, so I want you to keep an eye open for that during the course of today's webinar. We are in the process, I think I mentioned last week, of moving house at the moment, so I'm going through the pains and tribulations of people who move home. I get what it's like. It can be incredibly frustrating, so if I'm looking a little bit tired, that's part of the reason why. But yeah, this weekend we are embracing the move, and I'm pretty excited about being in the new digs very soon. So hoping to get everything set up in time for next week's webinar. Hopefully we'll have internet and all that sort of thing so we can get cracking. But anyway, that's a little bit about that. Let's crack on with today's webinar then. We'll get straight into question number 1, which has come in from Mary. Hello there, Mary. Thanks for joining us and sending your question in. So Mary says, I've had my offer accepted, my mortgage has been approved, and the survey completed on property we're buying. Communication has been dreadful with the seller's agent who didn't let us know the offer was accepted. When we call, we get told they will ring back in 5 minutes, but they don't. This branch is part of a well-known chain, so we would expect better service. The agent was relentless in pushing their mortgage service and conveyancers and refused to mark the property as sold on the internet until we either choose one of their until we chose one of theirs or provided details of who we're going to use. I will say that's fairly standard because they want to know that what they're being told is the truth, but we'll carry on with the question, Mary, thank you. What the agent hasn't told us was that the seller hadn't even begun to look for a property to buy. Our concern is that our mortgage offer expires in 3 months, and we don't think the vendor will be anywhere close to completing in time if they haven't even started looking. If we have to apply again for a mortgage, we will not be able to afford this property given the rise in interest rates. We asked if the seller would be prepared to move into rented to break the chain, but unfortunately they can't, as they need to move their mortgage onto the next property, as otherwise they'll be charged a hefty early redemption fee. Is there anything we can do in this situation so we don't lose the property? Okay, great question there, Mary. Thanks for sharing the detail there. I just want to clarify the bit you mentioned about the estate agent there with not marking the property as sold. They will want to know all of the information that they've asked for there in terms of, have you spoken to your mortgage broker? Have you got a solicitor in place? And have you got a decision in principle on your mortgage? That's really important so that they know that they can have confidence that you're a legitimate buyer, because you will be amazed at how many people will go into an agency office and say, yeah, we can proceed, not really knowing what proceed means, and sometimes they haven't even got their own house on the market or they haven't got a buyer and that sort of thing. So I just want to clarify that bit. But moving on, couple of things I want to pick up on, Mary, here that you said. First of all, nobody can force anyone to do anything in these sorts of transactions, and I understand your frustration that you've got this sort of time ticking on your current mortgage offer, and that it expires within that 3 months, and the seller hasn't got anywhere to move to. Now, there's a couple of things that I say that is a bit of a red flag for me here, and I'll just raise that with you, Mary, because you've said that you can't afford the property given the interest rate rises. And my view would be, if you're not stress testing your income against the sort of amount that you're paying out on your mortgage, then you need to tread very carefully, because a lot of people have been caught out in this trap where they've got into a property deal when mortgage rates are low and they haven't fixed their rate for a long period of time. And then as that rate is increased, they found that the property becomes more and more of a burden around their neck. They're unable to meet the payments. And what they end up doing is that then they could then be in a position where they end up losing the home because they can't afford to keep hold of the mortgage payments, as I say there. So the risk is significant that you could lose the property, you could lose your deposit, and the property might be taken off you and sold at a reduced price in the future. So that's something to be aware of. That if you already know that you can't afford it if interest rates rise, and the likelihood is they are going to rise over the course of the next few weeks and months, I would be looking very seriously at my financial position as far as that is concerned. Now, just coming back to the seller, I would ask what's your relationship like with the seller, because it might pay you if you're not getting a lot of cooperation from the agent. I'm not encouraging you to cut the agent out. That's not what I'm encouraging you to do at all, okay? But what I would encourage you to do is to have a conversation with the seller, because the seller may be faced with a difficult decision to make, and that would be, do they carry on procrastinating and not finding a place to move to, or maybe they are looking and there's just nothing available for them. If they lose you as a buyer, and then let's say the market takes a turn for the worse over the course of the next 3 months, which is possible, are they going to then end up faced with having to take a lesser price on their property, i.e. reduce the sale price of their property to attract another buyer? And would that reduction in the sale price outweigh any kind of redemption penalty that they might pay if they can't port their mortgage across in time? Okay, so there's a couple of options you can look at there. I would certainly get in contact with your mortgage provider at the moment, see if there's any flexibility in terms of extending that deal. Okay, or seeing what other deals may be available. There is a lot of panic in the market at the moment, and I think a lot of it's being hyped up, perhaps a little bit unnecessarily. But you don't know what the market's going to be like in 3 months' time. It might be, let's say if there was a big property crash, for example. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if there was, you'd actually be in a better position, because whilst you might have lost out on this particular deal, you might find that you then pick up a property at a lesser price in a few months' time. Okay, so that's something to think about. Obviously, we can't predict the future, which is what makes life so uncertain. And it's something that you need to bear in mind. You need to tread carefully in the uncertainty at the moment, and see what might come of it all. But the one thing I want to say, Mary, just to underpin this point, is that what I see happening for a lot of people is they go out and they try and get the biggest house that they can afford to buy, and they go and get the biggest amount of borrowing that they can, whether it's a 25-year deal or a 30-year deal or even longer terms. They borrow absolutely as much as they can. Right, and then they go out and buy this property, and as I say, it's fine whilst interest rates are low. But as interest rates start to creep up, that burden becomes almost too much, and it becomes the straw that breaks the camel's back. Now, bearing in mind, and this is something that most people never take into account, if you've taken a mortgage over a 25-year term, right, the likelihood is the economy will go through at least 2 cycles of a recession, maybe even 3. Okay, every 7 to 10 years, depending on who you listen to. Now, if you're in a job or you have your own business, and you're knowing that you're going to face 2 cycles of a recession potentially over the course of 25 years, surely it makes sense to be a little bit more financially savvy and to look at perhaps being a little bit more realistic in terms of what you can afford, but then paying off that loan a lot quicker and a lot sooner, maybe over the course of 7 years rather than over the course of 25. Because the one thing I can tell you about human beings is that we always like to look at the optimistic things in life, okay? And we never like to look at what the potential downsides of things are in the future, okay? So that's something to wrap your head around. Do some numbers on this as well, Mary, okay? So look at what would happen if interest rates creep up to a base rate of 5 or 6%, which is fairly standard. I mean, a lot of property investors I know, we will stress test our deals at a base rate of 6%. Okay, so that's base rate, not the actual interest rate, but the base rate of 6%. So that's something to be aware of. Can you afford it if interest rates went to 8%, 10%, 15%? Because that has happened in the past, right? It's something to be aware of, and it might cause you to really sort of pull back and start to review whether or not this is actually the right deal for you, or whether, like a lot of buyers at the moment, you've got caught up in this frantic marketplace, and you feel that you really need to buy this property because there's nothing else available. Okay, so hope that helps, Mary. I'd be happy to continue that conversation again if you want to at some point. See what we can do to help you further, but hopefully that's given you a little bit of a steer as to what certainly I would do if I was in your position. Okay. All right, so moving on to question number 2 here. This is from Jonas. Hi there, Jonas. So Jonas's question is, my parents are in their early 60s and want to buy a house. They currently don't own their own home as they've worked abroad until this year. They do have substantial savings, but not enough to buy a property outright in the area where we live in Kent. They basically want to invest in a property, so if either one of them dies, the other will be looked after. They are also thinking about it being inheritance for myself and my two brothers. They have been refused a mortgage because of their age, trying both the banks and a couple of mortgage brokers. How can they get on the property ladder at their age? Is it possible for me or one of my brothers or all three of us to take out the mortgage using their lump sum down payments and then make the repayments? Are there any drawbacks to this? Okay, great. So thanks for that, Jonas. There's quite a lot going on there in terms of looking after your parents, and it's all credit to you that you want to do that and look after them. There's a couple of ways that I would approach that if you and your brothers are thinking about helping them buy a property or secure a property for their, shall we say, retirement and old age. And particularly down in Kent, Kent can be quite an expensive area, right? So we need to be careful how we approach this. But if I was in your position, Jonas, what I'd be looking at doing is a number of different things. I'd look, first of all, at whether or not doing something like an equity release from your existing home or homes might be able to fund the purchase outright of a property for your parents. Now, you're going to have to consult with the relevant professionals here, because I'm not giving you professional advice. I'm not giving you financial advice or legal advice here. But what you want to look at here is what are the benefits of the different scenarios. So if, for example, you're looking at inheritance and you haven't mentioned how much might be involved, and you have to look at inheritance rates and all the rest of it, is it worth the inheritance, the transfer of the inheritance happening now, okay, with perhaps what might be a reduced relief over a longer period of time, okay, depending upon how long your parents survive after they've made the gift of the inheritance, if it's a substantial amount of money, or what would happen if you were all listed as owners of the property, so all five of you, for example, went on as joint owners of that particular property that you decide to buy. So there's a couple of number of different ways. One is having an eye to the future as to what scenarios might unfold, because one thing we can all be certain of is death and taxes, right? So we know none of us are going to get out of life alive, unfortunately. So we have to be of the understanding that at some point the final curtain will come down, and then there might be what's known as a taxable event, which in this instance could be an inheritance tax liability. So explore those options with somebody who's a little bit more qualified than I am to talk about these sorts of things. But if you were all joint owners, what would happen in that scenario? Okay, if they transferred the inheritance now, i.e., if they took a lump sum of cash and divided it between all three of you, first of all, there's no arguments, hopefully, because you've all had the same amount, and there's a lot of people that fall out over inheritance. And secondly, that might put you in a position then to maybe make an equal contribution in terms of, all three of your brothers getting in there to fund the purchase of the home. So that's something to think about. And the other reason why you might want to think about being joint owners is because let's say your parents are fairly young. So let's say they get another 20, 25 years living in this particular property. The property value could escalate quite significantly in that period of time. So again, with capital gains tax, inheritance tax, all that sort of thing taken into account, you need to be careful that you're not going to end up with your parents being in an even more difficult position where they're attracting more taxable liability. If the property you're buying doubles over 25 years, for example, which is possible, are you going to end up in a situation there where you breach the inheritance tax thresholds, and then there's a big penalty for you all to pay? So those are the sorts of things I'd explore. Secondly, I'd look at things like getting maybe a commercial loan or maybe a buy-to-let funding on the property that you're looking to buy for your parents, and then maybe rent it to them. That could be an option to consider. Okay, but you also want to be careful because a lot of lenders don't like it when you're renting to a family member. Okay, so you want to box a bit clever on that one, or be very careful about what you're doing, or find a lender that's happy for you to do that arrangement with your family. I've seen a lot of people, particularly in my estate agency days, guys, where people in similar circumstances to you, Jonas, have actually gone and put their parents into things like sheltered accommodation or these retirement living places. Okay, I think McCarthy and Stone are fairly famous in this area, where you're going into an environment which is sort of over 55s as assisted living or supported living in some respects. And what I would say is if you're thinking about doing that, be very careful and read the terms and conditions of the property ownership in those sorts of blocks, because I have seen them in the past where the sale value was quite high when you bought into it, but you're restricted on who you can actually sell it onto if you decide to sell the property in the future. So it could well be that you have to pay a fee to the owner of the block just for the privilege of selling the property, and it may well be that the resale value on a second-hand property, if you like, isn't as attractive as the sale value on a new property, and you might be competing against new properties when you come to sell that property in the future. Okay, so these are some of the things to be careful with and have a think about. Pore over the terms and conditions there of any kind of assisted living arrangement. Okay, and maybe the other thing to think about with your parents is to consider the possibility of going into short-term rented accommodation just whilst the market settles itself down. You'll get to know whether or not the market's going to start to retract a little bit and the prices are going to start to come down, and then you can maybe look at going into the market and getting a better deal for yourself as well. So there's quite a lot to consider there, Jonas. I know it's not exactly a black and white straightforward answer, but I would certainly be approaching that with an eye to the future on what will happen around taxable liability and how to approach it from that side. Again, if you're thinking about this, I would look at speaking to a tax advisor, not an accountant, okay? A lot of people go to accountants for tax advice, whereas the clue is in the title, if you like, of tax advisor gives tax advice, right? So go and find yourself somebody like that. If you are struggling, come back to me, let me know, and I will have a sift through my phone, see if we can get a good contact. I've got a pretty good one in South Wales who might be able to help you on that as well, okay? So thanks for that question, Jonas. On to question number 3 here from John. Hi there, John. I'm an estate agent and I'm really worried after the mini budget and the impact everything is like to have on the property market right now. Sales are still good, but I can see signs of some properties being reduced, which would have been unheard of several months ago. Do you have any thoughts about what's likely to happen with the market and what agents can do to bolster their business and ride the storm if there's going to be a recession? I really don't want my business to go from feast to famine. Okay. All right, John. Well, thanks for the question. Thanks for joining in with the webinar and putting that question forward. This is an interesting one. I've seen a lot of panic and accusations flying on particularly on social media about the mini budget, as they're calling it. And I think there's been a lot of reaction to this. A lot of people are saying things are not looking good, particularly on the financial markets, the pension markets, and mortgage markets as well, with a lot of lenders sort of retracting mortgages. The problem with these sorts of situations, John, is it's not necessarily the general economics that drives the market. It's actually the fear and the emotions. So as I'm sure you're probably aware, the two emotions that drive markets are fear and greed, right? And when the market's going up, as in the stock market or the housing market, a lot of people feel like they're missing out. So they get the FOMO, fear of missing out, and they pile into the market because they want to take advantage of the fact the market's going up. And then when the market peaks and it starts coming back down again, which is perfectly natural, then everybody gets panicked and they start pulling out of the market because they don't want to lose money, and then it affects the market and brings it back down again. Okay. So those are fairly simple emotions that drive the markets, and we have to remember that we're dealing with emotional human beings. That's what we are, and it's when the media gets hold of these sorts of things and starts talking about recession that really starts to drive the sort of nail in the coffin, if you like, and starts to push the market in a negative direction. So I don't want to necessarily join in with the panic. I have been expecting, as some of you will know, I think from previous podcasts that we've done and webinars, that I have been expecting the market to contract and pull back since 2019. I did not foresee, for the life of me, as pretty much everybody around the world didn't see Corona coming along, and the response across the world from all the different governments who just hit the printing press, pumped a load of money and pumped that into the economy. Now, at some point, that has to be paid back. At some point, the damage in the supply chains across the world that have been shut down are going to come to light, all those problems. And that's been happening. And this is what's creating this perfect storm, if you like, of negativity in the press and all the sort of economic problems that will follow. Now, I do follow a lot of people that are a lot smarter than me. As I say, I never profess to have all the answers. I just listen to people who've got, a bit more business acumen than I have, and that know a little bit more about the markets than I have, and that have been around in the world a lot longer than I have. And that they have all got one eye on the future, that the market is the property market and the stock market and the general economies of the world are going to contract, and that's pretty normal. We talk about recession cycles of 7 to 10 years and depression cycles of around 100 years, and the last depression was in 1929. So we're about due for that. Now, I'm not saying we're going to enter a depression. I don't want you to think that that's what I'm pushing here. But the point is, with any of these kind of situations, you want to be a good Boy Scout, right? And you want to be prepared for what might lie ahead in the future. And if you read, I think it's Not Good to Great, but Built to Last. Yeah, it's called Built to Last by Jim Collins and Jerry Paras. Now, that book looks at a number of different companies and how they managed to survive all of these different recessions and depressions, and how they built really strong businesses. And the outcome of that book was not what I was expecting at all. And the reason I mention it is because, if we are going to be faced with this dreadful economic situation, how do we make our businesses survive and thrive in these sorts of situations? And as I say, the outcome of that book is not what I thought it was. And I would highly encourage you to read that book with all of the uncertainty in the marketplace, because it'll give you confidence about what to do as we enter that market. And I haven't, unfortunately, got time to go into all of that. But what I can tell you is that in these sorts of situations, a lot of businesses make this one fatal mistake. And that is they cut their advertising and promotion because they see it as an unnecessary cost. Okay. That is a huge mistake. And the fact of the matter is, there has never been a better time in the whole history of the world to do shameless self-promotion across social media and all the rest of it for very little cost, okay? For the cost of a smartphone or your laptop, and just spending the time doing all of this different content creation, okay? Now, I think it's absolutely vital that businesses embrace this. And what you're going to see is that this market will sort the wheat from the chaff, okay? There will be a number of in the property industry specifically, there'll be a number of service providers that haven't been providing top-notch service that are going to fall by the wayside. And there's going to be those that have been providing stellar service who are only going to get stronger as a result of going through it. And I'll be honest with you, just to answer your question in more detail here, John, this is the whole reason why I wrote the Estate Agent Secrets book series. Okay, so this is a trilogy that I put together because this is a new way of sort of engaging in the estate agency business in a way that helps you to win more instructions and also increase your fees. And it's doing it in a way that doesn't involve you working more hours, longer hours, getting more stressed out with your business or anything like that. You can actually do it in a way that harnesses and leverages technology, and that gives you what I'd like to call the unfair competitive advantage in your business. Okay. And that I'll encourage you to, reach out to me about that, John, and I'll help you get a copy of those books. But the whole point is that you can't continue to do what everybody else is doing in the marketplace. Okay. And if you look at what most other agents are doing, and this is not a criticism of agents, but this is just looking at what a lot of people do in the market, is that the service unfortunately becomes commoditized, because a lot of agents look around at what their competition is doing and they just replicate what they're doing and then try and do the same service but for a little bit cheaper. And that's what ends up with what's known as the commodity death spiral kicking in. Everybody starts charging a little bit less and a little bit less and a little bit less, and then before you know it, it's a race to the bottom in terms of price. And actually, if you look at people like the most successful retailers in the world, so Chanel, for example, or I think it's Vivienne Westwood, they have the same sort of strategy. What they do is they do a very clever marketing technique, which is they reduce the supply or the availability of what they have available. So I believe Chanel, with all their retail shops around the world, they only send 1 or 2 items of the latest release to each store. So you either buy it when it's on the shelf and you own it and you have your Chanel handbag or whatever else it is that you might have, or you don't have anything at all. So they have a very unique marketing strategy around supply of the services that they have available. But because supply is limited and they've created the desire, then the demand also increases, which allows them to increase their price. So think about that along the lines of your service offering. How can you, increase the value of what you're offering and limit the supply? Do you want to be one of these agents that appeals to all and sundry and sells every type of property available from the least expensive to the most expensive, or do you want to specialize in a certain niche that allows you to charge a very fair fee for the work that you do and the value that you provide to your clients? So that's how I would tackle that one, John. The other thing I'm going to say to you as well is that we at WiggyWam recognize that the economy is going to be uncertain and there is going to be some difficulties on the horizon for a lot of people, and we are sort of embracing that, if you like, and we're going to be launching a new service very, very soon. This really helped to help agents and others to really make more money by offering new and improved suites of services to really help offer a stellar level of service to their clients, so that you've got more opportunities to make more sales, if you like, and increase your revenue. Okay, and I'm trying to keep it under wraps a little bit at the moment because what I have seen, unfortunately, is that there's a lot of our competition who are copying what we're doing. As I said before, it's probably a compliment in some respects, but I think that the main point is that as the economy changes and alters, and we end up in a situation where this sales will naturally slow down. Okay, so we've had the market far too good for too long. Sales are naturally going to slow down, and we're going to have to change the way we're providing value to our clients if we're going to succeed, and if we're going to keep that financial scoreboard ticking over and the cash register ringing. Okay, so if you want more information on that, John, please reach out to me, shoot me an email. Happy to help at wiggywam.co.uk, and I'll gladly sort of take you under my wing and show you what we're all about as far as that's concerned. But it is really exciting. I would like to say it's going to revolutionize the estate agency space. And we'll wait and see whether I'm forced to eat my own words. Okay. So moving on, just before I move on actually to this question, I just remembered I'm going to do a bit of a giveaway today, guys. So stay to the end of the webinar, and I'm going to share with you that I'm going to do a bit of a giveaway, which is going to be quite exciting because we've been moving house. I found some things that I think might be of interest to you, so we're going to do a giveaway on that. But anyway, quick interjection there. Let me grab a quick sip of water and we'll move on to question number 4. Okay, from Sahid here. Thank you, Sahid, for your question here. Okay, my question is about capital gains. I bought a house 20 years ago for 350,000 and lived in it for the first 2 years. I then let it out to move in with my partner, now wife. It's now 18 years later, and the property, according to some websites, is now worth approx 650,000. Capital gains tax would be approximately 300,000. If we use it as our main home for a couple of years and modernize it, plus add an extension, new kitchen, etc., the value would increase significantly to achieve 750,000 or more. An estate agent has said this. My question is, would the 100,000 extra as a result of the renovations also be subject to capital gains? All right, Sahid, thank you for the question. Sounds like you've done all right there on that property, which is great news. Sign of the times with the way the market's gone, particularly over 20 years of time there as well. So just to clarify, Sahid, I'm not a tax advisor. I'm not giving you any kind of financial advice here, just in case somebody decides to misinterpret what I'm saying, take action, and then get it wrong and try to sue me. But what I will say is that on your what's known as your principal primary residence, i.e. the main place of where you live, there should not be any capital gains tax payable on that at this moment in time. Now, obviously, you've got a different living situation where you're living in another property at the moment, and this property is not your principal primary residence, but you are talking about moving in. So let's say you're in a position where you're looking at maybe selling the property you're in at the moment, which I think you said is your now wife's property. Maybe you were to sell that because you've lived in there for a long time, 18 plus years. It's your principal primary residence. You could sell that one without any taxable liability, as far as I'm aware. And then you could move into this property and decide to live there whilst you decide to do your renovation works and your extension and all the rest of it. Now, because you are nominating that as your principal primary residence and you're treating it as your principal primary residence, i.e., you're living there, your posts going there, all your friends and family come around for dinner there, and all the rest of it, then as far as I'm aware, you should be able to claim exemption from any capital gains tax entirely on the entire value of that property. Okay. Now, as I say, you're going to need to consult a tax advisor, not an accountant, on this one. But it's worth asking the question because obviously your savings could add up significantly on this particular property. And this is actually something that happened to when I first got started in property investing. My first property mentor was a lady called Jill Fielding. She's actually been on the Secret Millionaire program, I should say, and she's a very, very smart cookie. Chartered accountant as well as a property investor, and she actually did this with her one of her principal primary residences. It was a flip. She'd bought a property, moved into it, lived there for a couple of years, did it up, made an absolute fortune on it, and there was no CGT to pay for her when she went through that. But what I am going to say, I'm going to caveat what I've said here and just be very careful, because what you don't want to do is do this on a regular basis. I have heard and known of instances where, for example, a builder has bought a piece of land, they built a house, they lived in it for 2 years, then sold it on. And they bought a piece of land, built a house, lived in it for 2 years, moved on, etc., etc. And he did that for 5 properties over the course of about a decade. And then what happened? The revenue caught up with him and then said, obviously, it's clearly you're doing this as a business, not just as a place to live. And they then went after him as a bit of a tax dodger and says, you owe us, capital gains on the property you've just sold and on all the other ones as well. Okay, so that was an accountant who shared that story with me a few years ago, and I just want you to be aware of that. That if you're doing it as a one-off, there shouldn't be any problems. And as I say, you're doing it as your principal primary residence, and it's your sole place of residence. So yeah, just be careful about nominating that. It might be worth conversations with tax advisors and tax planners for, if there's inheritance tax liability or capital gains tax liability, or potentially both here in this sort of a situation. It might be worth looking at that, Sahid. So with all of these sorts of things, it's best to plan in advance rather than waiting for an event to happen and then think, oh my goodness, how am I going to solve this? By then it might be too late. Okay. So hope that's been of some use to you, Sahid. Wish you all the best of luck with that. Could be a really exciting project for you, and could make all the world a difference to your circumstances as well. So good luck with that. And we've got another question here now coming from Catherine. Hi there, Catherine. We're buying from a couple who are moving to a new build. The builder at the top has requested a 28-day exchange period, which I understand is standard practice. Our mortgage application has been in with the bank for 2 months now, so we've gone beyond the 28 days, and the builder is threatening to pull out of the deal. How realistic is it that the builder will actually pull out? We're desperate for this to go through. Can or should our solicitor get involved and write to the bank and put pressure on them to get the mortgage confirmed, because the chain is about to collapse? Okay, so thank you, Catherine. It sounds like it's quite a short chain that you've got here. You haven't filled in on your situation below you, whether or not you've got properties to sell or whether there's a chain beneath you. But I'm going to assume for the time being that you are either first-time buyers or you've sold your property and you're in rented accommodation and you're ready to move. Okay. Now, first thing I'll say, do not let emotions cloud your judgment here, because again, I'm seeing a lot of that with people who have been struggling to find a property to move into. And what they've done is they've jumped at the first chance of finding a property and just want to get on the housing ladder. And then they might later find that this is not the right property for them for whatever reason. Okay, so don't allow your emotions to cloud your judgment, first and foremost. This is fairly standard practice from most builders that I've ever dealt with. And it recently happened for a client that I was helping out called Gillian, who was going through our conveyancing concierge service. She was buying from a builder, and the builder was really under a lot of pressure because he'd stretched himself financially to build 3 other properties. And he desperately needed his house sale to go through in order to pay off the bank, so that he could, get the pressure off himself and all the rest of it. So, what I would encourage you to do is definitely get an update from the bank, okay? Whether that's via your broker or your solicitor, to chase them and chase them and chase them and get an update. Now, again, with the uncertainty in the market, that may be reflecting upon why it's taking a while to get an answer to your question, or for them to issue the actual mortgage offer and get things complete. Now, one of the things I will say is that some builders might put pressure on for some kind of a commitment, such as a non-refundable deposit. That's what they, would love to go after. And you'll always have a different view about a non-refundable deposit depending upon whether you're the buyer or the seller. Okay, and I'm not going to encourage you to put money on the line that you might not be able to get back, particularly as it looks as though it's your the seller of the property that you're buying. It's their responsibility for dealing with the builder. Okay, but obviously, if they lose their property, you're not going to be able to get the one that you want to buy. So, what the builder might decide to do, and I'm speculating here, of course, but the builder might decide to either put the buyers into a contract race with another set of buyers, or maybe pull out of completely. But they might also be bluffing, particularly if buyers in the area have got a little bit nervous, they pull back, and there might not actually be another buyer lined up to buy the property. So I would go and talk to your clients and tell them everything that you're doing to try and get this deal completed as quickly as possible, and certainly talk to the agents, assuming that they're involved as well. One of the things I would say is, if you can demonstrate that you're serious, and I'm sure you are, Catherine, but what I would say is, if you can demonstrate that you're serious by putting all of the ducks in a row, if you like, all of the pieces of the jigsaw in place. So you've got your contract work done, you've got your searches back on the property that you're buying, and you've lodged your deposit with your solicitor in their client account, for example. If the only thing you're waiting for is the mortgage offer, and you're putting pressure on that literally on a daily basis to get that issued, then there's a very good chance that the builder may delay things. But I wouldn't bank on them, solely offering them the opportunity to buy this property until such time as the mortgage has been confirmed, or the mortgage offer has been confirmed, so that you can actually then complete the deal. I would show them your commitment, as I say, in terms of getting all of the paperwork done and completed, but I wouldn't then put yourself in a position where you exchange contracts or you pay a non-refundable deposit up the chain, particularly if this offer has not been issued yet, and you've been, how long do you say you've been going on for now? Yeah, 2 months waiting for it to come through. You need to get some clarity from them what's going on. Do you need to apply to somebody else to get a mortgage offer issued? It might just be standard delays. If you talk to the mortgage broker, they might be able to give you some comfort as to whether or not this is just this particular lender in this particular moment in the marketplace, whether there's better alternatives available, or whether their advice is that you just sit this one out. So I know there's not a great deal of help, Catherine, but my gut feeling tells me, whether it's right or wrong, but my gut feeling tells me that the builder's probably bluffing, most likely bluffing. They may not have many other buyers or people, putting a lot of interest in. In actual fact, this happened to a friend of my wife's recently. They were looking at buying a new house, and they were on a short list of 5 buyers to buy this house. And the developer was holding out for months and months and months whilst they finished the build. They wouldn't give them a price of what they were prepared to sell it for, okay, until I think it was probably April this year. Okay, they kept stringing them out, and then eventually they gave them a price for the house, which was more than what they were expecting to pay. And so every buyer that was on the shortlist turned around and says, "No, we're not going to buy the house." So they had 5 buyers disappear off their shortlist, and now the builder was left with nobody who wanted to buy that particular property. Okay, so you might be surprised. It may not be quite as doom and gloom as you suspect. And I would really encourage you to just go and have some conversations and put a bit of pressure onto the lender and see what you can do to get this kick-started and move forward, because I wouldn't like you to lose that deal. But on the same token, I also don't want you to put yourself in a difficult position because you're being driven by emotions, when actually, if it all fell apart, it might be the best thing that happened to you. And that's a bit of a philosophical viewpoint. But yeah, it's kind of how I think. I just accept that if something bad is happening, then it might actually turn out to be for the greater good. So I hope that's of some use, Catherine. By all means, give me a shout if there's anything else that I can do to support you on that journey. I hope it all goes through smoothly. You might find with a little bit of what I call conscious non-resistance, i.e. you let it all go and you accept what the universe is going to deliver to you as fate, you might find that the mortgage offer pops through fairly soon. So things have a strange way of working themselves out. But thank you for all the questions here, guys. I really appreciate everything that you've been sending through. I love the opportunity to go through these and hopefully help other people as well whilst we're doing this. We're sharing this knowledge and information. You're probably going to find that there's going to be other people that are listening to this that have got similar situations going on, and hopefully we've been able to give them a little bit of guidance on how to navigate these journeys. So I did say I was going to do a bit of a giveaway during the course of this webinar, and I just want to cover that with you now, guys. As I say, we've been moving house, we've been getting everything boxed up. You can't see in the back of my office here, but there's a ton of boxes in the corner, just that we tried to get them out of the view of the camera because it's getting pretty exciting, ready for the move. But I did find a number of books, actually. Now, this was the first book that I wrote. It's called As Safe as Houses. I don't know if you can see that. And this was a book around property investment. So if you wanted to get started in property investment, it's called As Safe as Houses, Cracking the Code to Profitable Property Investment. And this is one of the books that I wrote after, the story was, okay, if you want the whole truth on the story, I was working with one of the biggest property trainers in the UK, and I began to get a little bit disillusioned that people were paying an awful lot of money to learn the basics of property investment, and I felt a lot of it could be summarized in a book, a very short and quick and easy read book. And this is something that I think some people have commented to say it's almost like a £20,000 property training course summarized in a book. But I put everything in there as quickly as I can to get you started. If property investing is something that you're interested in, it would be a great quick read to see whether or not it is the right thing for you or not. Particularly as people's pensions are starting to evaporate or they're starting to decrease in value, property may be a better long-term solution for you. But obviously it's important that you go into these things with eyes wide open, and I'm not giving you any financial advice there, but it's worth you considering whether or not it's the case. And as I say, if you got your hands on one of these books, then you would give yourself a lot of grounding as far as that's concerned. So what I'm going to do, I've got 3 copies that I will give away. In order to get a copy, what I'm going to ask you to do is, I don't want you to send me any money for them. What I want you to do, I think there's a lot of people out there right now that need a bit of support in the economy right now. So I'm going to ask you to go out and do a random act of kindness or make a charitable donation or something of that nature. I don't need to know what it is. I don't need to know who it's being made to. I'm just going to trust you that you're doing it honestly. And as I say, I've only got 3 copies to give away. So if you want one, send me an email, happy to help at WiggyWam.co.uk. Let me know that you've done a bit of a charitable act. As I say, I don't need to know what it is or what you've given away or anything like that, or whether you've helped somebody. I'm going to trust you that you have. Send me your name and address, and I'll get a copy in the post, but do it quickly because, as I say, I've only got 3 copies to give away, and we're starting to rack up some serious views on these videos at the moment and get some serious interest on that as well. So hopefully that's something we can all get involved with, and it's a little bit of kindness in the world that is much needed right now with all the uncertainty and the emotional state that a lot of people are in with an eye to the future and what's going to happen. So looking forward to seeing what you've got to share there, guys. I'm super excited to keep doing these webinars. I hope they're giving you some value. Just love doing all of this sort of stuff. So please send me your questions next week or for next week's webinar. Get them through to us on the email address, happy to help at wiggywam.co.uk, or you can go to the WiggyWam website, which is wiggywam.co.uk, which is WIGGYWAM.co.uk, and you can find in the sort of weekly Get Your Property Questions Answered webinar, and we're going to post updates on that on the site, and you can drop your questions into there, or you can tweet us at WiggyWam UK on Twitter, and we'll gladly take those questions in as well. So thanks for joining me, guys and girls. Really enjoyed it again this week. Hopefully, as I say, we'll be live next week from the new digs, and it's going to be pretty exciting seeing how we move an entire house and get the office set up in time for that. So wish me luck, and I wish you all an amazing week, guys and girls. Have a great time, and let me know if I can help you in your property journey. All right, see you very soon. Take care, guys. Bye.